I'm good.
Hey, we got Brian Karem. You know him, you love him. Mary Trump's Nerd Avenger. Been a long time since I've seen him. Brian has been in the White House press corps, folks, for 40 years. He started in 1985. This man knows it inside and out. He is a White House columnist for Salon. He has a fantastic Substack called The Reporter's Notebook, and his book, Free the Press, and is his third printing. He has sued the Trump administration. They've tried to bully him. He's never been bullied. He's never bent the knee. And he has been trying to ring the alarm, sound the alarm. He's been trying to teach these young cubs, hey, do your job. Hold their feet to the fire. Don't bend the knee. Go get training. When one of your colleagues is bullied, you stand up for them. But lo and behold, they unfortunately do not listen to his wisdom. And now we see what I call the Bari Weiss-ification of U.S. media. And I will, for those who don't know what I mean by the Bari Weiss-ification of U.S. media, don't worry. We will explain everything and connect the dots. But I actually called it, Brian, today's framing is the corruption and the Bari Weiss-ification of U.S. media. And let's just use the Bari Weiss-ification of CBS. For
Oof.
those who don't know, break it down.
Well, what happened was, and this happens a lot in the press, the 60 Minutes interviewed Kamala Harris and cut the interview, right? Edited the interview for broadcast. They provided, by the way, a transcript of the full interview on their website. Donald Trump saw the full interview on the website, got upset, and sued them, said they edited it out to make her look good. This is called strategic lawsuits against public participation. It's when someone who's really rich goes after somebody who isn't as rich as they are and tries to use leverage their wealth against them. In the case of CBS, at that time, Paramount, who owned CBS, was going to be sold, and it had to be reviewed by the government because of a variety of reasons, antitrust legislation among. And so Donald knew if he sued them, he could get them to come to the table and do what he wanted so they could sell Paramount. And we can leave Sherry Redstone and all of that out of it. I'm not going to mention any names anyway. So, so, so anyway, so he sued them for this. This is a frivolous lawsuit. In court, he would lose. Everything that you ever put on tape is edited. And the fact of the matter is, they did a public a service by putting the transcript on the internet. So Donald Trump knew damn well that he didn't have a leg to stand on, but he also knew that they wanted to sell. And so he got them to bend over. They literally bend over and give him a settlement, and at the same time agreed to a lot of other frivolous things that Donald Trump wanted. And so he has effectively hobbled CBS. And that to me is just an indication. Look, man, when I got into this business, this kind of crap didn't go on. You came after a reporter, you came after CBS, the whole media would go after you. Hell, when I got thrown in jail, the whole media went after the state of Texas trying to do that to me. The whole media kind of helped out when I sued and beat Donald Trump 3 times in court, but not anymore. Not this time around. Donald Trump in this, I do not recognize the press, and I've been in it for 40 years. I do not recognize it today. It is a far cry from what it was, and it's a shame, and it's one of the biggest problems we face in this country today. And that's because Donald Trump and money have won the day.
That was a great breakdown. CBS paid specifically Donald Trump $16 million in pretty much bribed money. They could have won the lawsuit. It would have been a 12B6 because there's nothing there. There's robust First Amendment protections. They followed in the footsteps of ABC that also would have won its lawsuit, where George Stephanopoulos used the word rape instead of sexual assault to describe what Donald Trump did to E. Jean Carroll, essentially the same language that the judge used. And so he bullied ABC News. They settled. CNN settled, right? They paid him off. And what happens when you pay off the bully? They think, oh, the bully won't attack them. But no, the bully comes back for more. In addition to paying off Donald Trump so they can, if you will, grease the wheels of this merger that has gone through between CBS and Skydance, Sherry Redstone completely just threw the entire reputation of CBS under the under the wheels.
I'm sorry, what was her name again? Sherry Redstone. Yeah,
Sherry Redstone.
never forget that name.
Sherry Redstone, she doesn't give a shit. And she's already a billionaire, but she doesn't care. So she wants more money. And speaking about 60 Minutes, can you remind people who I think it's Bill Owens, what he did?
Left. Quit. At the end of the day, the problem though I have
No, but
with
who is Bill Owens? Why is that such a big deal? Because I don't think people realize what
well
happened this
you
summer.
I well Bill Owens in essence was guiding the ship of state at CBS in more ways than one, and I forget his executive title. Executive,
I think he was the only one of three executive producers in 60
that's it.
Minutes' entire
Yeah,
history.
yeah, the third, yes, and, the problem he was also look, 60 Minutes was the flagship, man, for CBS as far as news. Investigative reporting, breaking news that they would investigate as well. This was man, when I was a kid, that's where you wanted to be, 60 Minutes. Now, you couldn't pay me to go there. People have fled, and like I said, the problem I have with that is and I understand why he did it, and I don't blame him for doing it. But if you don't stand and fight, then you also are giving them what they want. So at the end of the day, I think you need to stand and fight, even if you go down. And that takes me back to Ben Bagdickian, and I'll quote him: "Never forget that your obligation is to the people. It is not at heart to those who pay you, or to your editor, or to your sources, or to your friends, or to the advancement of your career. It is to the public." And so I feel like when you abandon the role that you have, the ability to push back, I know you're making a statement, but at the same time, you do lose the leverage that you have to affect the public. So I get it. I understand why he quit. I even actually would support it, but at the same time, I don't know if I would do it. I would probably stay and fight to the bitter end because I'm just a stubborn son of a bitch.
And the reason why it's such a big deal, and within news and media for the nerds, it was a big deal, and obviously most people don't understand it, is because Bill Owens, like Brian said, you know, was the captain of what was the crown jewel of CBS News, right? The crown jewel for television news and television journalism, and he resigned as not just only as a form of protest because he said CBS was interfering in their coverage of Donald Trump and, wait for it, Israel and Palestine. And he
Yeah.
said to maintain journalistic independence and integrity, I will resign. And that was like the Paul Revere moment for everyone else. Like, hey, guys, this is what's happening. Don't bend the knee. And everyone since then has bent the knee, right? And then also when it came to CBS News, I'm forgetting her name, but she forcibly resigned as well. So they purged 60 Minutes, they purged CBS News, and now Larry Ellison, multi-billionaire, Larry Ellison, hard right pro-Israel Zionist, Larry Ellison, a man who says that he shouldn't die. It's not fair for him to die. He wants to live forever. Not making this up. That Larry Ellison's son, not a Nepo baby, David Ellison, has now been brought in to be the head of CBS post-merger. And David Ellison has decided, and there were rumors about this, but now it seems it's almost we're just basically they're waiting for the ink to dry and to be signed on the contract. He's bringing Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss started something called the Free Press. Barry Weiss started off her career, for those who don't know, as a hard right pro-Israel activist
Still
who,
far right.
yeah,
Still,
who
and
engaged
bringing
in
him in is the absolute and this is what's wrong with us today. That we have because everyone says we're tilted right or we're tilted left. We're tilted towards money. And this Barry Weiss-ification is to bring in more money. That's what it's all about. Did I lose you?
I hope you can all hear me. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
In a,
Did I
in,
lose you? I thought I lost you. Well, I'm
it's
going,
not just
help.
it's not just money. And I think what's really bad about this
Well,
is
that's what drives it all. It's what
it,
you're right. It's not just about money, but money. And let's be honest. Let's talk about the root cause of this because
okay.
I think we're chasing the wrong game sometimes. It's not just going after the press we should be going after, but all of this began because the government wanted it to happen. It started with Ronald Reagan. The control of the media began then. And while I'm really upset with my colleagues and I'm really upset with my profession, hold the government accountable because they got rid of the fairness doctrine, because they allowed multiple ownership, because they allowed what we have today a conglomerate of 5 or 6 companies owning. Um,
Big
mul-
six.
yeah, 6 companies own 90 to 95% of what you see, read, or hear on a national level. And by the way, and this is a study done by Chicago, University of Chicago, 45%. And I want you to think about that hard. 45% of the counties in this country, nearly half of the counties in this country, do not have a local media source.
Yep.
And in those cases, the study showed that without proper media, in the last election, Donald Trump won 91% of those counties, most of those in a landslide. The lack of education and the lack of public discourse and the lack of reporting is the biggest problem. We're complicit. The owners are complicit because they worked with the government to do it, but the government loves it and wants it because they can control the access to information and control what it. And if you don't believe it, folks, take a look at the frickin' press briefing room today. I'm not going to be able to get my questions in there, but by God, if somebody wants to come in there and ask Donald Trump if he squirts rainbows out of his ass, they'll get the first question in the briefing room.
We're going to talk about the corruption of the White House press corps and also the money, but I want to stick on Bari Weiss for a second
Oh
because you
yeah,
talked
sure.
about
Well,
control.
he is part of the problem. Go
It's
ahead.
all
Yeah.
connected, right? It's about control. And I think that's where I want to
Yes.
link it back to Bari. And then let's talk about the Bari Weiss-ification because I think it's a trend of things to come. And it's a synthesis of everything that you said. So Bari Weiss is this pro-right Israel activist whose entire career is from the time of Columbia University. She went after these witch hunts after Palestinians, right? And then she was this gadfly who then ends up at New York Times, where I first encountered her when we were, I guess, colleagues, as you could say. And in the New York Times, along with Bret Stephens, Bari Weiss made more attention for her controversies and controversial tweets, right? And she always complained about, the woke and this left wing and yada, yada, yada. And she got away with shit that if anyone else did it, you and me, Brian, we did it, we'd be friggin' fired, right?
And
But
you
her,
know how she got away with it? You know how they're getting away with it? Because one of the things that they've done as the constriction in the media has occurred, they've fired the people that do what needs to be done, fact checkers and copy editors, because those people are the ones who hold the line. And when they're not there, idiots like that proliferate and spout their bullshit, and nobody calls them on it.
And she then said she quit and whined and complained. And as soon as she quit, she started something called the Free Press. Now, the Free Press is apparently for First Amendment and freedoms and rights, except when it comes to, I don't know, Palestinians and pro-Palestinian activism and Mahmoud Khalil and Rameza Ozturk.
Or
But
vetted
I digress.
facts. If it has
Oh,
anything to do with vetted facts, that's they don't want. That's
and
their idea
also
of
this
free media, free to bullshit you.
free to bullshit you. And the way I described it in the New York Times, and I was very proud of myself. This was last year when they did a huge profile on Bari Weiss in the Free Press. They got my quote, and this is my quote. The Free Press is a salon for the privileged laments of the powerful, masquerading as the grievances of the oppressed. I thought that was pretty clever on my part. And what it is,
I'll buy that. That's a pretty good description. Yes.
it's funded by David Sachs, a billionaire who is part of the South African PayPal oligarchy, who's now the head of the czar of AI. All these billionaires, Bill Ackman's, Ellison's, all these people who hate to feel uncomfortable about Me Too, all these people who hated BLM, all these people who hate student protesters, right? All these people who hate the fact that people are saying free Palestine, they go to the Free Press. That's their salon. And so here's this essential blog, which, by the way, doesn't have that much of a readership. The YouTube videos are not at all impressive, right? It's okay. It got bought out or is about to be bought out by $200 million, overinflated. And then Bari Weiss is allegedly now, as part of the $200 million buyout by CBS of Free Press, something that is maybe worth $20 million. She is now going to come on as an ombudsman, a type of mother hen of CBS News to make sure that it's fair and balanced.
Can
You
all right,
are a Lebanese American man. Your take on this, in addition to being a White House reporter for 40 years.
well, boy, there's a lot in there to unpack. Let's unpack first what you said, ombudsman. Ombudsman is what we need in the press. Ombudsman correct mistakes, tell us what we got wrong, and we come forward and we admit it. All great newspapers used to have ombudsman. This is a misnomer. This is not an ombudsman role that she's been hired for. This is not an ombudsman. This is propaganda minister. That's what
There you
this
go.
is.
There you go.
So we got to call it what it is, because an ombudsman will call you on the facts, vetted factual information, goes through the fields complaints from readers, goes through and says, okay, that was right. And so we used to get gripes in the newspapers that we would see, you make the mistakes on page 1 and we wouldn't see the corrections till page 20. Well, actually, it used to be on page 2 at most newspapers I worked at, and would take up a half a page sometimes, and it would correct very simple things, but like the spelling of names, addresses, facts that were got wrong. But it gave the newspapers and the television stations credibility, because you could trust that if there was a mistake, they were going to correct it. What this is going to do is to make sure that only one voice is heard, and it's all PR all the time for Project 2025 and Donald Trump. Now, as a Lebanese American male, and more importantly, as a reporter and as an American, I find this loathsome. I find it horrific. I find it less than tolerable. And I find it a crock of shit, if I could be so blunt. Because
Yep.
at the end of the day, there are people I know, that are reporters that have been injured and died in Palestine, in Gaza. And folks, that is genocide. And if you can't call it what it is, you're not a reporter. If you don't know what it is, then you haven't been reading. And if you don't know what it is and you think that is somehow linked to poor Israel, then you have been fed nothing but propaganda. Now, Israel as a Catholic who has Muslim cousins and Jewish cousins, I will tell you that everyone has a right to exist, but you don't have a right to what's been done in Gaza. And by God, they've killed more than 24 journalists there. Why? Because they do not want you to know the truth, and they're going to hide the truth, and they're going to use the New York Times, CBS, and all mainstream media tools. I hate that term, but corporate media is better. Corporate media tools to hide the truth. And it's not just about Israel. It's not just about Gaza. It's about everything that this administration does. They do not want you to see the facts. Now, I've had reporters work for me over the years, and this is my biggest gripe about how they cloud things these days. They're going to tell you the truth. That's bullshit. How many thousands of religions are there in this world? Every one of those has their truth. I want to tell you vetted facts from which you can decide the truth for yourself, but we all agree upon the vetted facts. I've had reporters come to me that have worked for me, and they go, well, this is what I think. And I say, well, it wasn't you, but I say to the reporters, I don't give a shit what you think. I barely care what I think. What do you know? And we've gone past that. Nobody cares what you know. They only care what you think, and they're going to tell you what to think. And that's the problem with the press today, telling us what to think. Just give us the facts and label your opinions as such. But there's no room for that in today's press. And what you're outlining is a very good example of how they're going to avoid doing that in today's press. They're going to hire people who are of a similar mindset to preach to you what they want you to believe. They're going to keep you in that informational silo and speak to your own prejudices without giving you any of the facts contrary to what you may believe. And that is a danger. And then people say, well, we're facing fascism today because of this. And I go, no, you're wrong. We're already fascist today because of it. This is a fascist nation that you live in. You better do something to change it. And it's got to start with the press and education. There's my rant.
Control. That was a fantastic rant. That was one of your best rants, and I've heard many of your rants. It's about control. You mentioned a couple of buzzwords, which I think connect the dots. It is about control. It is
Yes.
about propaganda. And I will add, it is about whitewashing and gaslighting America about the fascism that they're experiencing. I'll give you an example, folks. I'm just sticking with Bari Weiss because this is going to become a trend, and I think we should sound the alarm. The Free Press. This is the name of her blog, which is not worth $200 million that David Ellison, the Nepo baby of Larry Ellison, is apparently going to shell out to buy. CBS is going to buy it and then going to bring her on as their propaganda minister. 3 weeks ago, the Free Press did this horrific piece in which they did an investigation into the alleged starving kids in Gaza and found out that these starving kids in Gaza that were being shown through corporate media actually had pre-existing conditions. So that's why they weren't actually starving. Uh, that's what they did, folks. And other people are like, yeah, it's because of Israel's occupation and the starvation and the famine that they already had pre-existing conditions, and now they have phase 5 starvation, right? So that's the type of shameless, naked, if you will, whitewashing,
Why?
gaslighting.
They've done even. Let me just take you back to the reporter and the crew that was killed, what, a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
And
with
what
Nasser Hospital?
yes,
Yeah.
outside of the hospital, Weiss and others pushed the bullshit that reporter was working with uh, terrorists and led a terrorist cell. Now, as a side gig, this guy was supposedly a reporter. I have covered wars. I have been in war zones. Terrorists do not hide in front of the camera. Terrorists hide underground in tunnels, but not standing in front of a camera talking to civilians and soldiers. And by the way, you can't lead a terrorist cell, which is pretty much a full-time job, and then do a side gig, which is reporting, because that's a full-time job. And not only that, you are broadcasting 3 or 4 times a day. You're on social media. You're printing something for the print edition. You're talking to witnesses. This is, and in a war zone, all the time, you're trying to keep your ass from getting blown up. And you are working. You are lucky if you get 4 hours sleep doing that a day while you're working 20 hours just to stay alive and to propagate and to promote that particular line of bullshit was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And you talk about the Weiss-ification, that was unfathomable, unthinkable, unforgivable, and the Israeli government pushed it. The Israeli military pushed it, and Weiss and others promoted it. And that, to me, folks, is just the biggest problem with the press today, right in a nutshell.
Control, propaganda, and gaslighting. I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. Uh, Thursday night, media is now
And
controlled by,
death because of it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
yeah,
interrupt, but getting people killed, getting reporters killed, getting innocent civilians killed because of everything you just outlined. And what you got to realize is that's the end game. Killing people who disagree with you and will give you facts and will not bend the knee. Kill them. Now you can kill them,
kill them, detain them, deport them,
get them
silence them.
fired, silence them, all of it. That's the
Mahmoud
goal.
Khalil, no due process, detain him. Rumeysa Ozturk, Turkish grad student, co-wrote an op-ed, arrest her, send her to Louisiana. Venezuelan, alleged drug dealers, who cares? Blow them up. Pro-Palestinian groups, remove them from school. Make sure that they get expelled. Crack down on their groups. Doesn't matter if it's a multiracial, multicultural group run by Jews. Doesn't matter. They threaten us.
And if you
Diversity,
think it's not
DEI.
happening here, if you think it's not happening here, wake up. Look at the first Trump administration and now, and look at the press corps then and now. Where are we who pushed back in the White House in the first administration? You don't see us there because they don't want us there.
DEI, right? Scrubbing
Yes.
of our history, scrubbing of our books, scrubbing of our stories, and removing women, people of color, or anybody, folks. This is why I always keep saying fascists come for everyone. Anybody who is a threat. I always want to remind people that Mike Pence is the whitest, most Christian, most conservative man on earth, and he was running for his life on January 6th. And speaking about the purging of how this is happening, and the irony, the free press is perfectly fine with the killing of journalists in Gaza, with literally the abduction of pro-Palestinian students and activists, literally crushing anyone who says free Palestine, silencing them, getting them fired, right? The free press of Donald Trump and freedom, it's all projection, it's all bullshit. Safe space for me, no safe space for thee. Free speech for me, silence for thee. Civility for me, cruelty for thee. Look at how we treated Yamiche Alcindor yesterday. Can you tell us about how that's a perfect example?
Well, it's no more perfect example than I mean, all of it is a perfect example. You probably know that situation better than I do because I've been too busy. Look, here's
He
my
called her
thing.
darling. He called
Yeah,
her darling. Then when she pushed back, he told her, what did he say? He basically said, "Shut up" to her. I'll get it,
yeah.
but like, and she's a black woman. And the question I want to ask you: I'm going to get the exact quotes, what he did to her, because it's so gross. I just talked about it with Danielle. Because he was so disgusting with it. First, he calls her darling. Then he goes in
Yes.
a tirade because she does her job. Are you trying to go to war with Chicago? She asked him. And then he got so pissed off. And then he dismissed it. And he goes, listen, be quiet. Listen. You don't listen. You never listen. That's why you're second rate. That's an exact quote. That pissed me off. Each time I hear it and I see the clip, that pissed me off when he told her to be quiet to a black woman and said, listen, uh, if you were there, what also pissed me off is none of her colleagues
Backed her
followed up
up.
on her question or had her back.
Yeah, well, nobody will follow up. That's look, where I beat the son of a bitch 3 times in court when he tried to take my press pass. Uh, Jim Acosta beat him trying to take his press pass. April
I'm
Ryan.
speaking to Jim at 4 o'clock, by the way.
Yeah. April stood up to him. April Ryan stood up to him. There were plenty of reporters who pushed back against him in that first administration. Jim isn't there anymore. April, you'd barely hear from. I'm not there. The problem is that so you have someone who and by God, I can't tell you the number of times he told me to sit down, and or he told Jim to shut up, or told me to shut up, and told April, actually tried to recruit April to talk to black educators. Why don't you bring them into the White House? He said. She looked at him like, "Are you nuts?" This is the idea that Donald Trump is a king is what Donald Trump is about. The idea that Donald Trump can tell you what to do. I remember one time when he was introducing Neil Gorsuch, we were in the East Room of the White House, and I started to ask him a question, and he told me to sit down. And I said, I am sitting down. And he said, "Oh, yeah, of course you are. Go ahead, ask your question." And he would never call me by my name. He always called me Playboy. "What do you got, Playboy?" Because I'm senior White House correspondent for Playboy, and he wanted to be Hugh Hefner. His jealousy was that he wanted to be Hugh Hefner. So he did enjoy a fight a little bit in the first administration, but the number of times he told April to sit down, a black woman, Jim, who's what? He's Puerto Rican, right? He's
Cuban.
Hispanic. Yeah, yeah, Cuban. I'm sorry, Cuban. Sorry, Jim. My bad. And me, I'm Lebanese American. But if that doesn't, he'll tell. He's in that regard. He's not discriminatory in that regard. He just doesn't like people asking him questions.
But he's
So
especially hostile to black women,
oh, he's
especially.
his yes. Well, he's especially hostile to black women who will question him hard and will push back against him. If they were obsequious, he would continue to call her darling and say, "Hey, you look pretty good. Why don't you?" Which he did one time to a black reporter.
Harrison Faulkner. He
Yeah,
loves Harrison Faulkner
yeah.
of Fox News.
Yeah, yeah, because they don't if you give him trouble, that's when you're gonna have trouble, and he's especially afraid of any women. I mean, black, white, brown, green, he cannot handle a strong woman at all, and it's been obvious from the get-go. And who does he have in his press who's his press secretary, by the way? I mean, she's not pushing back. I'd call her the pep secretary, give her a pair of pom-poms and a cheerleading skirt, and that's it. Rah rah. I mean, this is a woman who will come out, talking about not strong, will come out and tell us that Donald Trump, yeah, he solved seven, not brought peace, but solved 7 wars, as if it's a jigsaw puzzle or a jumbo. And then Donald Trump comes out and says, yes, and I solved 3 pre-wars as well. Well, what the hell's a pre-war, Don? A pre-war is peace. You solved peace? Would you start a war and then end it? And you can't get a straight answer out of any of them. It's fealty to Donald Trump that counts. And at the end of the day, if you're going to call him into question, he's going to get pissed and because he can't handle it.
I love Francis just called her Stepford Press. I'm going to use that from now on, Francis, and give you credit. We're talking about Caroline Levitt with a big cross, and we showed a photo today on Democracy Ish with Danielle and I. You know, look at what they make you give. Look at how they devolve. And we showed a photo of Caroline Levitt before and after. Brian, she's unrecognizable. She had
Oh,
the MAGA makeover, like Kristi
nailed
Noem, and
it.
also like Laura Trump and all these others. My God, that's how Trump likes them. So that's look what they make you give. It's like the Faustian bargain. It's like literally in real
Oh,
time. Like you literally devolve in real time with the cross
well,
on your face.
I tell you what else I'll make you give money. Donald Trump, by the way, if you miss it, folks, Donald Trump 2 or 3 times a week. is printing out and sending emails to his people saying, "I want to get to heaven. Help me out. Just give me $10." And that's, again, they actually, he says he'll get to heaven if you give him $10. And I want to know how
Prosperity
many fools.
gospel, baby. Prosperity gospel. Talk to us about CNN and the failure of CNN and how Abby Phillips, a black woman, her job is essentially to sit there as Scott Jennings, who I think might be now the highest paid CNN contributor, gets to essentially talk shit and be like a heel. I call this in real time the example of what I've described as affirmative action for conservative men and corporate media.
Well, let's talk about Scott Jennings, shall we? He's from Louisville, Kentucky. And I know him too well. He got his start with Mitch McConnell. His whole goal is to become Senator Jennings from the state of Kentucky. But he has a political acumen of a slug, the mental acuity of a dry leaf, and all the attraction of toast. The man is a complete buffoon. But he was smart business wise. You used to have to go, if you were going to shoot in Louisville, for example, there were 3 or 4 studios where everybody would go, including the congressman, the mayor, any witnesses. If you were going to be on a national show, there were 3 or 4 studios. Scott Jennings opened his office in a building that they call the Flash Cube building because it looks like an old Polaroid flash cube, about a mile from where my mother lives. Top floor. Got to deal with all the networks, killed all the other studios. He's the one-stop shop, and he made a deal with CNN. They decided that he was the guy they would go to, and they invested in him. CNN invested in Scott Jennings, who has no background in doing anything that he does other than the fact that he will kowtow and toe the line. No political experience, no working experience in the press, no ability to handle any issue that is of substance or of nuance, but he can talk and he will back them up. He is merely a circus clown, and he's a highly paid circus clown. And so when you talk about Abby Phillips having to be on a set with that circus clown, I simply look and go, I feel bad for her. But somebody at CNN bent over, and they're not going to allow her to push back against him
Nope.
because he's paid, and they want him there because they want to be Fox Light.
Yep.
That's why that's why Jim Acosta isn't there anymore. That's why those reporters who were doing a good job during the first administration are not there. And the people that they have hired are co-opted and corrupted for the most part.
What about the both sides bullshit? Because I'm old enough to remember Joe Biden, who was old, Joe Biden, whose health did deteriorate. Every time Joe Biden sneezed, every time Joe Biden fell off his bike, I was told he's gonna die. The Grim Reaper is following him. He apparently, people without any medical degrees were saying that he has neurological disorders. He has dementia, Alzheimer's. Jake Tapper wrote a book. My anger about this is the following. Okay, suppose that was the standard of your coverage for Joe Biden, oldest president at the time. Now you have a man who's been elected, and he is currently the oldest man ever to be elected. A man who clearly is not well, a man who has a giant blotch on his right hand, we still don't know why, a man who has cankles, a man who no longer does rallies, a man who has publicly fallen asleep several times, a man who disappeared last week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and over the weekend. We still don't know why. And yet, where is the media, as Kira is saying, on President Cankles?
I ask that question every day, and I make a point on Substack and on TV and on live stream and on shows like this of pointing out the fact that he has now turned into a part-time president. Now, you may say he's on the back nine at his golf club, and maybe he is. But Jake Tapper has a lot of apologizing to do. That's another guy I want to talk to. And we're 2 years away from him going on another book tour, saying, "Well, you should have noticed this about Trump at the time." Well, some of us noticed. If you want to say that Joe Biden slid into senility, I'm going to tell you that Donald Trump, took a headfirst dive into it. And the fact of the matter is, if you look, and I keep track of this because I cover the president, he has routinely in the last 8 weeks, no, wait a minute, it's going to be the last 11. 2 or 3 of those Mondays, he has not shown up at all. He is simply not working. He is, you will see him 2 or 3 times a week for 4 hours at most. And here's another clue that everyone, and this is one thing we used to report with Biden, and we don't report it now with Trump. When does the Marine Corps guard show up outside of the West Wing? Because that Marine Corps guard there is there by tradition from the moment Donald Trump or the president walks into the West Wing to the moment that the president leaves. Routinely, he's not there to almost noon every damn day, and he's gone by 4 every damn day. And Donald Trump is only there 3, maybe 4 days a week, tops. To me, it looks like he's putting in 16 hours at best a week. And he is either incapacitated, eating, watching television, or playing golf the rest of the time. And actually, I kind of like that because the less time he spends working, the less time he has to screw with the rest of us. Unfortunately, there are people holding his leash these days, and one of them is that Nazi called Stephen Miller. And
Yep.
10 years from now, I predict this, 10 years from now, they will disavow ever knowing Donald Trump, many of these people, or say they were secretly trying to go after him and check him the whole time. Donald Trump will never spend a day in prison. But
Nope.
by God, Stephen Miller ought to.
Yep.
Stephen Miller needs to go to prison. He is a criminal and a traitor to this country. And by God, I hope I see the day. I hope I live long enough to see the day that that man is dressed in orange and is walking in chains because that's what he deserves. And
You and
we,
me, pred-
yeah.
you and me predicted Donald Trump will never spend a day of his life in jail. I think, unfortunately, our prediction will come true. My hope, though, is if Democrats and the majority finally hold this country accountable and the sinful people in this country accountable for their numerous crimes, we will, inshallah, see trials after the end of the Trump regime and not make the mistake that we did, after the Civil War and instead elevated the secessionists, racists, and traitors. But let's see. You need the willpower and you need that type of a fighter and you need that type of a vision, which Democrats so far don't have, but inshallah they
Well,
might. Brian,
you and I
I
both have talked
go ahead.
about that. You and I both have talked about the lack of. That's what bothers me most about the Democrat. How low can Donald Trump go and you not crawl over the bar? I mean, at some point in time, please, guys, fight.
Yeah, well, I don't think this current leadership I've said it before, I'll say it again, not just Schumer, but Jeffries, I've been saying it for months, they're not built for this fight. They're not made for this moment. I'll repeat this. Not all Democrats. Jeffries, Pelosi, that old leadership, folks. I'm not using old as a pejorative, that old way of thinking. And Schumer, they're not built for this fight. They're not made for this moment. And look how they're treating Mamdani. Just gives you one example of numerous
Yes.
examples. And look at the fact that Jeffries and Schumer has still not said anything publicly about Donald Trump and JD Vance openly advocating unilaterally killing people. The person who had the most robust response was Rand Paul, a Republican who called out JD Vance with his absurd tweet where he said, "I don't give a shit if this is a war crime." No word from Schumer, no word from Jeffries. So we need better leadership because we're dealing with a fascist regime that has now co-opted corporate media to control the population through lies and propaganda and to gaslight and whitewash all of their crimes.
And to
Brian, I
your
would have
point,
kept you. Go ahead.
the biggest problem that Biden had was he had that old style of thinking about reporting, and he thought he could still control it the way it had been controlled or done before. And he didn't step up to the moment. And we have seen again and again and again that when the Democrats come out, and if just one Democrat would walk into a Republican community meeting and go, "Hey guys, what is it going to take for you to vote for me? What do I need to do?" And they were authentic, I think, hell yeah. I think there are a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of MAGA supporters over the last few weeks that are ready, willing, and able to vote for somebody other than Donald Trump. The thing is they go, yeah, sure, he's an existential threat. He's tearing up the Constitution. but they think that the Democrats are worse. And I have to remind them the infrastructure bill that you tout today, that you think was a great thing, that was a bipartisan effort by a Democratic president. And probably one of the last times we've seen Democrats and Republicans working together. Don't you think, for the betterment of our country, that we should work together and that the people who do that are the ones you want in office? I shouldn't be saying that. The Democrats should be saying that every damn day and campaigning on it. And I sometimes I just look at them and I go, man, you don't understand. You want to vote for somebody that wants to tear up the Constitution. The Democrats usually want to do what's right. They're lousy about talking about it. The Republicans want to do what's right for them, but want to convince you they're doing what's right for you. And that's the difference.
Folks, I got to run because I got to join Jim Acosta in 10 minutes. I got to send him some information. Otherwise, I would keep talking to Brian. But Brian, always great when you join. Brian Karem has been in the White House press corps for 40 years. He is the author of the book Freed the Press. He is a White House columnist for Salon, and he has a fantastic Substack called Reporter's Notebook. Folks, it's the left hook. Everything here is free. There's no paywalls. Please be a subscriber to Brian's Reporter's Notebook and the left hook. If you have a few dollars, give it to us. If not, you know, take your kid out for some ice cream, but at least share this good information, this conversation. There's about 1,000 people watching, Brian. Some of those who tuned in late, Brian was in top form today. I've heard Brian for a couple of years, but I think this was A plus Brian Karem form. He was on it. We're going to
Well,
have
thank
this
you,
out
Waj.
on our Substack, my Substack, and his Substack. You can watch it. I strongly recommend watching it to understand why the corporate media has bent the knee, why it is being controlled by billionaires, what their end game is, what their propaganda is, and how we need independent voices who are at least willing to call strikes, balls, take on Republicans, take on Democrats, and get you, the truth. And we're done with restoration. We need reformation and we need fighters. So help fighter Brian Karem. He's been in the trenches. He's taken out Donald Trump, won 3 lawsuits against him. Brian Karem, White House columnist for Salon, again, Reporter's Notebook. And folks, I'll be on in 10 minutes with Jim Acosta. Brian, thanks so much, buddy.
Thank you, Waj. And look, I used to have black hair until Trump became president. I was only 19.
I, I had black hair too. This is what he does. He
Yeah,
ruins everything. But there's more of us than there are of them, damn it. We're going to win. Don't be a fascist, folks. Be kind and be empathetic instead. Take care.
you too, brother.